Part 1. For as long as I can remember, there was always a space where I should have been, but wasn't. It showed up in frames hung across our living room, in carefully arranged albums guests flipped through, and in the annual holiday cards my mother proudly mailed out. Smiling faces, coordinated outfits, warm sunlight, and never me. At first, as a child, I didn't understand it. I thought maybe I had blinked too much in photos, or maybe I just wasn't standing in the right place. But as the years went on, I began to notice something colder, something deliberate. Every time a photo was taken, my mother would position me on the edge. And every time those photos appeared later, I was gone, cropped out like I had never existed. I once asked her why. I must have been 8, standing on tiptoe to look at a newly framed picture on the wall. My brother stood proudly between my parents, all of them dressed in soft pastel colors, their smiles perfectly aligned. "Mom," I said carefully, "where am I?" She didn't even look at me when she answered. "You were making a face." It ruined the picture. Her tone was dismissive, like the explanation should have satisfied me. But I remembered that day. I remembered trying so hard to smile just like them, my cheeks hurting from holding it in place. That was the first time I felt something crack inside me, something small but permanent. Over the years, the excuses changed, but the outcome didn't. The lighting wasn't good on your side. You were standing too far out. It just looks better this way. Each explanation chipped away at me, shaping a quiet understanding that I wasn't meant to be part of the picture, literally or otherwise. Family gatherings became performances I wasn't invited to participate in fully. I would help set the table, bring out dishes, clean up afterward, but when it came time to capture the moment, I was always just out of frame. By the time I was a teenager, I stopped asking questions. Instead, I started avoiding cameras altogether. It was easier to disappear on my own terms than to be erased afterward. I buried myself in schoolwork, volunteering, anything that kept me out of the house and away from those silent reminders of where I didn't belong. And yet, despite everything, a small part of me still hoped. Hoped that one day, my mother would call me over, wrap an arm around my shoulder, and say, "Come stand with us." That day never came. When I turned 18, I left home with nothing but a suitcase and a quiet promise to myself, I would build a life where I didn't have to fight to exist. College wasn't easy. I worked 2 jobs, took night classes, and learned to rely only on myself. But for the first time, I felt seen. Professors remembered my name. Friends asked me to be in their photos, laughing when I tried to step aside out of habit. "Get in here," they'd say, pulling me closer. It felt strange at first, like I was stepping into a role I didn't quite know how to play. But slowly, I began to believe that maybe I deserved to be part of the picture after all. Years passed. I built a career in event coordination, a field where details mattered and nothing, and no one, was meant to be overlooked. I became known for my precision, my ability to make every guest feel included, every moment perfectly captured. There was a quiet irony in it, one I rarely spoke about. I made sure no one else would ever feel the way I had. Then, one afternoon, I received an email that made my stomach tighten. It was from my mother. The message was short, almost formal. They were planning a large anniversary celebration, 30 years of marriage, and needed a professional coordinator. My name had been recommended. No mention of our history. No apology. Just a request, as if I were a stranger. I stared at the screen for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to protect the life I had built far away from them. But another part, the part that had spent 18 years searching for herself in missing corners of photographs, whispered something else. Maybe it was time to step back into the frame. I replied with a simple, professional acceptance. They didn't recognize me when I arrived. Standing in their doorway, clipboard in hand, dressed in a tailored suit, I watched as my mother greeted me with polite enthusiasm. "You must be the coordinator," she said, extending her hand. Her eyes scanned my face briefly, searching for familiarity, but finding none. I shook her hand firmly. "Yes," I said, "I'll be handling everything." Inside, the house looked exactly the same, except for the walls. New frames had replaced the old ones, but the pattern remained. Smiling faces. Perfect moments. Know me. I walked through the space, noting details, making plans, giving instructions. My voice was calm, confident, professional. No one questioned me. No one looked twice. To them, I was just another hired expert, someone brought in to make their celebration flawless. But as I moved from room to room, I couldn't ignore the quiet tension building inside me. 18 years of absence, of being erased, compressed into this single moment of return. And then, in the hallway, I saw it. A large, newly framed family portrait. My parents stood in the center, my brother beside them, his arm around his fiancée. Everyone looked older, more refined, but the composition was the same. Perfect, complete, except for one thing. The empty space on the edge where I used to stand had been tightened. Cropped, like I had never existed at all. I stopped walking. For the first time since stepping into that house, my professional mask cracked. Because this time, I wasn't going to stay out of the picture. Part 2. The night of the anniversary event arrived wrapped in elegance. Soft golden lights draped across the garden, tables adorned with delicate centerpieces, and a live band setting the tone for what everyone would later call a perfect evening. Every detail had been executed flawlessly, because I made sure of it. Guests moved through the space with ease, laughter blending with music, glasses clinking in celebration. It was everything my mother would have wanted. And still, no one knew who I was. I moved quietly among the staff, checking timelines, adjusting arrangements, giving subtle cues. Years of experience had taught me how to be present without being noticed, how to control the entire atmosphere from the background. It was a skill born not just from training, but from a lifetime of being invisible. At one point, I caught sight of my mother across the garden. She was radiant, smiling as she greeted guests, soaking in admiration. My father stood beside her, proud and composed. My brother laughed with friends, his fiancée holding onto his arm like she belonged there. They all looked complete. And for a moment, I felt that old familiar pull, the instinct to turn away, to remain unseen. But I didn't, not this time, because tonight wasn't just about their celebration. It was about something they had erased for 18 years. Midway through the evening, it was time for the slideshow, a carefully curated display of memories spanning 3 decades of marriage. I had insisted on overseeing it personally. My mother had happily handed over boxes of photos, trusting me to make it beautiful. She had no idea what I found inside. The screen flickered to life, and the first images appeared: young love, wedding days, early years of building a family. Guests smiled, some wiping away tears as the story unfolded. Then came the familiar pattern: birthdays, holidays, milestones, every frame polished. Every moment intentional. But then, something changed. A photo appeared that made my mother's smile falter. It was an older image, one I had restored. The lighting was softer, the edges less sharp. My parents stood in the center, my brother beside them, and on the far edge, slightly out of place, was a small girl. Me, uncropped. A murmur spread through the crowd. My mother's eyes locked onto the screen, confusion flickering into something sharper. The slideshow continued. Another photo, and another, each one carefully chosen, not the edited versions displayed on their walls, but the originals. The ones where I existed. Sometimes awkward, sometimes slightly off-center, but always there. A child trying to belong. My brother leaned forward, his expression shifting as recognition dawned. "Wait," he whispered, barely audible. Then came the final image. It wasn't old. It was taken just hours ago. A candid shot from the event, guests laughing, lights glowing, and in the center of it all, standing confidently with a clipboard in hand, was me. No cropping, no erasure. The screen faded to black. Silence filled the garden. I stepped forward. For the first time that night, I wasn't blending into the background. Every eye turned toward me as I walked into the light, my heels steady against the ground, my heartbeat calm despite everything building beneath it. My mother stared at me, her face pale, her composure unraveling. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice tight. I met her gaze, steady and unflinching. "This," I said softly, "is what the pictures looked like before you decided I didn't belong in them." A ripple of whispers moved through the guests. "I spent 18 years wondering what I did wrong," I continued, my voice carrying across the quiet space. "Why I was always just removed, adjusted, cropped out like I didn't matter." My father shifted uncomfortably. My brother looked between us, his confusion turning into something heavier: realization. I thought maybe if I tried harder, smiled better, stood in the right place, I let out a small breath. But it was never about that, was it? My mother opened her mouth, but no words came. I took another step forward. "I built a life where no one gets erased," I said. "Where every detail matters. Where every person is seen." My voice softened, but it didn't break. "And tonight, I made sure of one more thing. I gestured lightly toward the screen behind me. That I was seen too. The silence stretched, thick and undeniable. For the first time in 18 years, there was no way to crop me out of the moment. No way to adjust the frame. No way to pretend I hadn't been there all along. My mother's eyes filled with something I couldn't quite name, shock, regret, maybe even guilt. But I didn't wait for an apology. I didn't need one, because this wasn't about fixing the past. It was about reclaiming my place in it. I turned, walking back through the garden, not as a shadow, not as an afterthought, but as someone who had finally stepped into the frame on her own terms. And this time, there was no one left who could erase me.